Hello, this is Bryant Myers, author of PEMF, The Fifth Element of Health. I'm really excited to bring you this video today. This is what I call the body-mind-earth connection in my book. I want to extend that to new information that I've learned since I've written my book. And I'm now calling it the body-mind-heart-earth connection because, as we'll see, the heart is a very important part of this connection. In fact, both the heart of our body and the mind of our body and the heart of the earth and sort of the mind of the earth, as we'll see. We're very deeply connected to planet Earth, as I talk about in my book. And I'm going to first summarize the body-mind-earth connection as I talk about in my book, and then add to that what I've learned. And it's really one of the central themes that I share, and it's really, really important. Before we get into that, I just want to talk a little bit about the interconnectedness of all things. You know, from quantum field theory and entanglement, we know all the atoms in the universe are connected. Chaos theory, we know that the flap of a butterfly's wings in Brazil can cause a tornado in Texas by the sensitivity to initial conditions. Because again, all of life is very, very intimately connected. Add to this the wisdom of the spiritual traditions that reinforces this oneness in spirit and consciousness. But we're also very connected to planet Earth and the magnetic field of planet Earth, especially the Schumann resonant frequencies of the ionosphere, those PEMFs, and the actual geomagnetic field of the Earth, the magnetic field that we're used to seeing with our compasses. I call this the body-mind-earth connection, but I'm expanding it now to the body-mind-heart-earth connection. Just to review what I talk about in my book is there's this connection between the Earth's magnetic field, the brain waves of the body's cells and tissues, and even the frequencies we emit. That is to say, the Schumann resonance frequencies are roughly in the range of 0 to 50 hertz, and we'll talk about this more in a little bit. The cells of the body tend to ideally resonate to this frequency. The research of Dr. Zimmerman shows that we even emit these frequencies. So just to kind of recap, the brain state frequencies within this 0 to 30 hertz, or I kind of expand it to 0 to 50 hertz, and you'll see in a minute why I do that. But more or less, our brain state frequencies from low delta to high beta all operate within this natural Earth frequency range. Low delta is roughly 1 to 4 hertz, theta waves roughly 4 to 8, alpha 8 to 12, and beta waves 12 to 30. And then gamma waves, which can be hypercreativity, is around 30 to 50, or even a little bit higher sometimes. So, you know, the brain state frequencies can go above 30, so I'm kind of expanding what I say in my book from 0 to 30 hertz to 0 to 50 hertz. Addy and Bowen, way back in the 70s, showed that even at the cellular level, that our cells seem to ideally respond to this low frequency range. And I'm going to show you a chart here, which is from James Oshman's excellent book on energy medicine. And you'll see between 0 to 50 hertz, most of the published research on PEMF and frequency with different types of tissue regeneration and healing are all within the 0 to 50 hertz range. And interestingly, the higher frequencies you'll see in this chart, 72, 100, and 200, have corresponding lower frequency analogs. So you'll see osteogenesis, DNA synthesis, for example, are above 50 hertz, but they have also frequencies that you'll see like at 10 hertz and 5 hertz, for example. And this is one thing I tell people, for example, about PMFs versus, say, Rife machines or other forms of energy medicine, is there is a lot of good published research on these low-frequency PEMF signals. In fact, there's over 30,000 studies on PubMed with different search queries on PMF since the late 70s. Even more fascinating, when I first read this, I really literally got goosebumps, is that Dr. Zimmerman and Dr. Seto in Japan confirmed it, that through Reiki energy healers and Qigong masters, that we even emit this 0 to 30 hertz or 0 to 50 hertz range. And the peak frequency was around the main Schumann resonance, between 7 to 8 hertz. And interestingly, the body kind of sweeps up and down this frequency range. So it's like when you're getting a session from a Reiki healer, if they're very good at what they do, you're getting basically pulse electromagnetic field therapy. This was done with very sensitive magnetic field detectors called squid magnetometers. They're very, very accurate. So we're talking about actual magnetic fields here, not like auras or anything kind of new agey. This is scientifically measurable magnetic fields. Just to recap, our brains operate within this Earth frequency range. Our cells ideally respond to this frequency range. The main published research on PMF has shown this frequency range to be the most healing and the most regenerative, and we even emit these frequencies. So just kind of think about that for a minute. Let that sink in. And now I'm going to get into those. What are those frequencies? Well, that's the Schumann resonance and the geomagnetic frequencies. Let's start with the Schumann resonance. So you can think of the Schumann resonance as sort of the heartbeat of the Earth in a sense, meaning the Earth has an ionosphere, which is a very complex interaction between the Earth's neutral atmosphere and the sun's fully ionized, very charged. So it's kind of this calm atmosphere on the Earth and this very chaotic, violent energies being blasted out of the sun. And so the ionosphere is kind of this bubble of plasma, like a big soap bubble around the planet. This bubble of plasma reflects, sort of mirror-like on the bottom, and it reflects frequencies. So basically creates this spherical cavity. And guess what? The actual frequencies of the spherical cavity, just like a tuning fork has a resonant frequency based on its geometry, so does spherical resonators or cavities have resonant frequencies. And the resonant frequency is 7.83 hertz, which is the Earth's fundamental note. This frequency is created, again, from the complex interaction of the Earth's ionosphere with the sun. It becomes very energetic, and we have somewhere around 7 million lightning strikes every day around planet Earth from all this energy. And so this tremendous voltage potential between the ionosphere and the surface of the Earth creates all these lightning strikes, and all those lightning strikes ring this spherical resonator to the tune of 7.83 hertz. And it does have higher harmonic frequencies. I want to just show you this chart here done by the Global Coherence Initiative. This is where some of my new information is coming from. It's kind of connected to HeartMath. I really love their information because they have over 200 published studies, and they have now, I think, 8 sensitive magnetometers around planet Earth and measure the Schumann resonance on a daily basis. And contrary to what the New Age people are saying, the Schumann resonance is not going up. It's still the same 7.8, and then it's got all the higher harmonics. And the reason I'm expanding my window to 0 to 50 hertz is because there's one higher harmonic at 45 hertz that's not as strong, but it's still significant, and then the harmonics really drop off after that. So the Schumann resonances are really between this 0 to 30 hertz range. And you can even see from this graph here, there's a couple little spikes below 5 hertz even, so it's still kind of there, but it mainly starts at 7.83 and then goes on up. And again, like I said, this frequency range is the frequencies of the brain, what the cells respond to, what the tissues are ideally healed, and even the frequencies we emit. There is some very, very fascinating research done by Nobel Prize-winning Luc Montagnier, which he shows and further demonstrates the importance of the Schumann resonance. I'm going to show you an image here. This is a very detailed study, but I'm just going to give you the bottom line. Basically, the bottom line is that the Schumann resonance frequency, it seems to be very unique for allowing DNA even to assemble properly. Meaning, if you take a vial of a double helix, like a fully intact DNA molecule, and put it next to just a blank vial of water, and then if you sort of blast the Schumann resonance within, and again, both vials are magnetically shielded, so you're kind of saturating both the vials with the Schumann resonance. Because the Schumann resonance is a PEMF, this frequency, it's able to carry information from one test tube to the other, just pure information. Now you take that blank vial of water and mix it with DNA precursor material, and out pops the fully constructed DNA. In fact, with 98% success, and this has been duplicated in 11 labs, but just in full disclosure, not all labs have been able to duplicate it, but 11 different labs have now duplicated this. It's very, very profound. If you really think about that, it shows you a deep connection between DNA, which is sort of the blueprint of life, and the Schumann resonance. At the deep level of life itself is the DNA molecule. That's the Schumann resonance. And in my book, I go into some details and the whole story about discovering that. But now there's the geomagnetic frequency as well, or the magnetosphere, the static field of the Earth that we measure with our compass. And this geomagnetic field radiates hundreds of thousands of miles into space. You've probably seen those pictures where you have the solar wind, like it's got a tail on one side because the solar wind blows it. It's a static, and more or less a static magnetic field. But there are some frequency components to it. So think of these magnetic field lines you can see in this image here. Think of those as like guitar strings. And what happens when you pluck these strings, like say with the solar winds coming on in, it kind of plucks those strings energetically, and it actually creates a frequency. Okay, this is not the Schumann resonance now. Okay, the Schumann resonance kind of comes from above, from the ionosphere to the Earth. The geomagnetic field of the Earth is coming via the dynamo theory, coming from the core of the Earth and wrapping around. So now we're coming from the bottom up. More or less, it's a static field, but it does have very slow, we call it sub-hertz frequencies, basically between 0.1 and 0.5 hertz. And you can see this chart here graphing out the main peak at 0.1. You see a spike there, another spike at 0.4, kind of rolls up to nicely connecting with the Schumann resonance. Remember I said 0 to 50 hertz? So the Schumann resonance kind of comes down to 4 to 5 hertz. And then the geomagnetic frequencies are coming up very slowly. So really, it does cover all your brain state frequencies very, very nicely. And in my book, I give some even further explanations of these lower frequencies. Now, why is 0.1 hertz, or this geomagnetic frequency, how does that connect to the body and the brain? Well, actually, it connects very profoundly. And I want to show you a chart here, and I don't want to get into the details of this study right away, but 0.1 hertz seems to be a fundamental coherent frequency that connects all systems of the body. And just to kind of put it in perspective, when I say 0.1 hertz, that means 0.1 cycles per second, or if you use the period, which is the inverse of the hertz, it'd be a 10-second period. So basically, it takes a cycle a full 10 seconds. So if you're inhaling for 5 seconds and exhaling for 5 seconds, that's a 0.1 hertz frequency. There's different ways to get into a coherent state. When I say coherent, I mean, this is when your heart, your mind, and your emotions and your physical body are all in sync and resonating in cooperative alignment, basically balanced, you're centered. Meditation can do this, different types of positive emotional techniques. Heart math has some great techniques for centering and creating this sort of coherent heart intelligent state. But when you're there, and they've done numerous studies on this now, and you can see this graph is very profound. So at the very top of the graph here, you're going to see sort of a chaotic jiggles between heart rate variability, which is a measure of the health of your central nervous system. It measures the intervals between consecutive heartbeats. The graph also shows blood pressure and respiration. At the 300-second mark on this little thing right in the middle, you'll see something happens. You'll see that the things go from being chaotic and they all look different to all of a sudden there's a phase locking, there's an entrainment, there's a resonance. And again, what the subjects did in this study is they practiced one of heart math centering techniques, or kind of like a meditation or a positive emotional state technique. And when the subjects got into this positive emotional state, all their systems, and not just the heart rate variability, blood pressure, and respiration, but this is a body-wide phenomena. If you see this peak at 0.1 hertz, when I first saw this, and then I looked, and again, I'll show an image of the geomagnetic frequency, again, 0.1 hertz. When I saw the connection between the geomagnetic frequency of the Earth and this coherent heart balance state of the body, I really got goosebumps. I got wow. Not only is the brain deeply connected to the Schumann resonance, so there's this deep connection between 7.83 in the alpha state in the brain. That's the Schumann resonance. Now the geomagnetic frequency coming, I guess you could call this more of the heartbeat of the Earth because it's coming from the core of the Earth, and it's aligning our hearts, our heart rate variability, and all the systems in our body. So this is the same frequency as the main geomagnetic pulse, this key resonant frequency when all these different systems in the body come into what's called entrainment, which just means they're all beating in step. They're all synchronized. They're all dancing to the same beat, right? And that's the state of health, right? You could summarize health is coherence, when all the body is very connected and working together. So the body-mind-earth connection goes deeper than what I talk about in my book. It's actually the body-mind-earth-heart connection. And when I say body here, I mean all the different systems in the body are intimately connected to the magnetic field of the Earth and the Schumann resonance of the Earth. And I just want to show you this little diagram here. The heart's magnetic field can be detected several feet away. It is the strongest field in the body. In fetal development, the heart forms and starts beating before the brain. And actually, this goes way back before heart math. They have shown that the heart sends signals to the brain more than the brain sends signals to the heart. So in a way, the heart has its own brain, its own heart intelligence. In fact, in some ways, it's more primary, more fundamental. Think how the heart field can be measured, say, at least 5 feet away based on just a decent magnetometer. The brain field can only be measured a couple inches, if that, from your brain. So the heart field's much stronger, much more encompassing. So it kind of makes sense that it'd be more fundamental. Emotional states can be related to heart rate variability. And again, the way the heart beats and is related to the central nervous system can actually be measured, meaning different positive emotional states have a very characteristic frequency pattern. And negative emotions have a very chaotic frequency pattern. It can be actually quantified and measured, the heart field. Let me just give you an example where you've probably experienced this field. Have you ever walked into a room and you could cut the tension with a knife? Well, that's an example of where you're feeling the fields. We're actually very sensitive. And again, HeartMath has done studies to show that we can sense somebody's magnetic field like 5 feet away, even with a wall between the two subjects. So we have the ability to sense magnetic fields and other people's magnetic fields in their emotional states. The body-mind-heart-earth connection is very profound. And this is one of the reasons why I recommend a low-intensity, low-frequency PMF device, like the iMRS 2000. The Beamer is pretty good as well, and there's a few other systems on the market. You want that frequency range to be in this 0 to 50 hertz range, and you want the intensity to be at a lower intensity level. And I've gone into several videos on why more is not better. And by daily supplementing an earth-based PMF session, it helps to restore balance and coherence and health back to the body. It helps the body to synchronize. And this is why you want to use a low intensity, because you just want to help to gently nudge the body back into its entrainment. Of course, I recommend eating a good diet and drinking plenty of water and getting out in the sun, connecting to the earth through grounding and earthing, positive emotions, practicing emotional release techniques to keep your emotions positive, and supplementing with an earth-based PMF system, I think can really help. Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and check out my website, pmfbook.com. So again, thanks for watching.